Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist. If you had 1 minute to be able to unpack for the audience, we interview the world's leading apologists to provide credible answers to curious questions. Well, it's a real privilege for me to be with you, Mike. I know that you are a great guy and he loves the Lord, and I just can't tell you how blessed I am to have you on our program today.
Well, thanks, Bob. Great to be back with you.
I know that you play with this idea. If you were in a taxi cab, how would you respond? Well, I'd like to kind of throw that your way. If you were in a taxi cab and somebody was to say the Gospels have contradictions in them, how would you answer that question?
I'd say there are three essential issues in coming to grips with these differences, these tensions in the Gospels. The first one has to do with the ability to distinguish between a difference and a contradiction. A contradiction would be something like when the Titanic sank, there were survivors who said that the Titanic broke in half and then sank, and then other survivors said, no, it went down intact. That is a contradiction. There's no way of reconciling that. A difference would be something such as, I come home and my wife said, you wouldn't believe this, an hour ago a guy shows up at the door and from Publishers Clearinghouse and he gives me a check for $15 million. But then an hour later she's talking to her mom and says, you wouldn't believe this, but a little while ago 2 guys show up at my door. One gave me this check for $15 million, the other's videotaping the thing saying I'm going to be on television. That's a difference. It's not a contradiction. One contained more information, the other was not exhaustive. Many of the differences we have, or alleged contradictions in the Gospels, are actually differences and not contradictions. The second issue that we would look at is to understand the genre or literary type of the Gospels, because they're according to Greco-Roman biography, and just like in much of today's literature, there were certain literary liberties that were allowed. Time compression, lack of precision when it came to minor chronological details, and such as the temptations of Jesus in the wilderness. Matthew and Luke, one of them inverts the second and third. We wouldn't regard that as a contradiction. We would say that that's a difference. It really doesn't matter the chronology, something like that. Again, most of them can be looked at as understanding the genre, the literary type of the Gospels, rather than contradictions. And then the third point I would make is the importance of differences, and that is this. I don't see any direct contradictions in the Gospels, but let's just suppose for a moment that there were. That doesn't mean that the Gospels are unreliable. It may force us to revise some of our views of inerrancy, but it wouldn't mean that they're historically unreliable. No more than the fact that eyewitnesses, survivors of the Titanic, contradicted on whether she broke in two, nullifies the story that the Titanic sank. So putting this all in perspective, we see that this really doesn't at all call into question the historical reliability of the Gospels.